Hello everyone. Welcome back to our YouTube channel, where we dive deep into various aspects of narcissism. Today, we'll explore an often overlooked but crucial element in narcissistic dynamics, abandonment. This concept plays a significant role in understanding the narcissistic experience. So, let's get started and untangle this complex issue. In the typical cycle of a narcissistic relationship, idealization, devaluation, discarding, and hoovering, it often seems like the narcissist holds all the power. They appear to control the relationship, using tactics like love bombing, seductive behavior, or pseudo-empathy. But once they've secured your attention, their interest tends to fade, doesn't it? This marks the beginning of the devaluation phase, where their apparent disdain becomes evident, fueled by their inability to form genuine intimacy. For narcissists, the chase is often the most thrilling part of any relationship. They usually decide when to end things or at least frequently threaten to. However, contrary to popular belief, many people actually choose to leave narcissistic partners. In fact, as awareness about narcissism and its abusive patterns grows, more individuals are deciding to walk away. They're realizing that narcissistic behavior is unlikely to change, making it healthier to end the relationship. Ending things with a narcissist is rarely welcomed by them. It signifies a loss of control over the narrative, their validation source, and the comfort you provided. Their reactions can range from angry outbursts to mockery, like sneering, "Do you really think you'll survive without me?" Sometimes, they feign indifference, masking the sting of rejection. What's often overlooked is how vulnerable narcissistic individuals actually are to feelings of abandonment. Typically, abandonment is associated with fragile or despairing personality types. Many assume narcissists are too detached to experience such emotions, but that's not entirely true. Abandonment is largely about perception, and for narcissists, even ordinary events can trigger this response. Surprisingly, something as simple as a loved one leaving for a trip, going to work, or even stepping out for a short while can spark deep-seated abandonment fears in narcissistic individuals. It's a common misconception that narcissists are immune to such emotions. In reality, their struggle with abandonment is rooted in complex psychological factors, often tied to attachment theory. Attachment theory suggests that narcissistic personalities frequently exhibit anxious, avoidant, or disorganized attachment styles. As a result, forming secure, stable relationships becomes challenging. For narcissists, even brief separations can trigger intense distress, highlighting unresolved attachment wounds. If you've been in a relationship with someone exhibiting narcissistic traits, this pattern might sound familiar. Imagine preparing for a work trip or family obligation. As the departure date nears, tension builds. The narcissistic partner grows more agitated, nitpicking minor issues and creating unnecessary conflict. Your attempts to keep things pleasant are met with worsening behavior, sometimes culminating in a heated argument just before you leave. This pattern often repeats upon reunion. Instead of a warm welcome, the narcissistic partner may act cold, distant, or resentful, almost as if punishing you for leaving. This aligns with their anxious, avoidant, or disorganized attachment style, where separation triggers primal abandonment fears, and the reunion stirs unresolved resentment. "I can't believe you left me." Interestingly, this reaction happens regardless of who leaves. The mere act of parting, even temporarily, is enough to ignite these intense emotions. This can be traced back to the primal nature of abandonment. It's not the rational adult farewell of "see you later, I'll call when I get there." Instead, it resembles the terror a baby feels when a caregiver leaves the room, unable to comprehend the separation. It feels as if a part of them is missing. While adult narcissists may not consciously recognize this fear, it profoundly influences their behavior and relationship patterns. They inevitably experience it as a disaster whenever someone significant in their life is away, whether for hours, days, or even permanently. People with antagonistic personalities are particularly sensitive to rejection. Any form of rejection can be emotionally destabilizing for them, often leading to intense reactions, even when the situation seems trivial. Something as simple as declining a dinner invitation can trigger this response. While it might not appear as intense as abandonment fears, this sensitivity to rejection explains their extreme reactivity to perceived criticism or neglect. For instance, if you say, "I can't make it to lunch today," they might interpret it as a profound loss of love or respect. Yet, despite this underlying vulnerability, narcissistic individuals often project an image of strength and control. They despise appearing weak, so they suppress the emotional impact of departures. Instead, they redirect their anger toward you, the person who unknowingly triggered these uncomfortable emotions they neither understand nor wish to confront. You might find yourself surprised by their fragility, especially if you're accustomed to seeing them as dominant and controlling. When you attempt to comfort them, they might respond with increased contempt, as your reassurance only highlights their vulnerability. This intense reaction to abandonment is traditionally associated with borderline personality traits. However, the overlap between borderline and narcissistic personality styles suggests shared origins, particularly concerning attachment issues. While we typically associate abandonment crises with borderline patterns, they are also relevant to narcissistic personalities. The difference lies in the outward presentation. Narcissists don't display the same overt despair and instability often seen in borderline individuals. This distinction often prevents people from recognizing the abandonment fears lurking beneath a narcissist's facade. Abandonment fears also shed light on the phenomenon of hoovering in narcissistic relationships. You might wonder, if they fear abandonment, why would they leave and then try to pull you back? Interestingly, narcissists often end relationships as a preemptive strike against their own abandonment fears. By leaving first, they maintain control over the narrative and shield themselves from the emotional impact of rejection. It's like bracing for a jump scare in a horror movie, knowing it's coming feels less terrifying than being caught off guard. After abandoning someone, they might experience a primitive urge to regain control by pulling the person back. This disorganized push-pull dynamic is a hallmark of narcissistic relationships, often manifesting as hoovering. You might fall for it, and the cycle begins anew, much like a child seeking attention from a caregiver who momentarily stepped away due to the child's disruptive behavior. At the core of a narcissist's abandonment fear lies the threat of losing validation, control, and narcissistic supply. It also activates internal narratives of rejection and shame. Understanding this dynamic helps explain the roller coaster nature of narcissistic relationships. This brings us to an important question: what's the antidote to abandonment? How can we manage abandonment fears? The answer lies in developing a sense of security and safety in the world. But how can one achieve this, especially if they lacked healthy early attachment experiences? The path to emotional security involves therapy and personal growth, cultivating self-compassion, self-reflection, and self-awareness. It also requires embracing emotions rather than fearing them. This journey is challenging for anyone, but particularly difficult for individuals with narcissistic traits. Some of you, despite experiencing insecure attachments early in life, may have done the hard psychological work to cultivate emotional resilience as adults. However, for narcissistic individuals, this transformation is rare. They remain in a constant state of perceived threat, even when no real danger exists. This heightened sense of vulnerability is closely tied to their internal dialogue, with abandonment ranking high among their perceived threats. Consider those of you who've been in narcissistic marriages. You might resist divorce for many reasons: children, financial entanglement, cultural or religious beliefs. Yet, narcissistic partners often weaponize the threat of divorce as a form of gaslighting, keeping you on edge and compliant. However, when you finally agree to their repeated threats, they may suddenly backpedal. "I didn't mean that. We can work this out." This reaction clearly reveals their abandonment fear. As long as they controlled the narrative, they felt secure, but the moment you accepted their demand for divorce, their fear of abandonment was triggered. I hope this gives you deeper insight into the vulnerabilities underlying narcissistic personality traits. If this resonates with your experience, I hope it brings clarity. If you're new to our channel, please subscribe and join our community. I look forward to seeing you again soon.